How you guys doing? Happy Sunday night. Captain Dylan Hubbard here with Captain Mark Hubbard, talking to you tonight a little bit about fishing tips and tricks. We're going to get rolling here very shortly. Give us a few minutes and we'll get started. Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this live, give us a few minutes. We'll get started. If you're not watching this live, give us a few seconds. If you are not watching this live, go ahead and skip forward when you see the stream starting soon sign. Skip forward a minute or so and you'll see the video restart. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Happy Sunday night. We're going to get rolling here very shortly. Again, if you're watching live, just give us a few seconds and we'll get started. Thanks for tuning in. All right, guys. Happy Sunday night. Captain Dylan Hubbard here. We're going to get rolling here very soon. Good night, Facebook. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you watching the show tonight. Captain Anthony couldn't make it, so we have Captain Mark Hubbard and myself. So Captain Dylan Hubbard, Captain Mark Hubbard here tonight to tell you a little bit more about some nearshore and offshore fishing. Give you lots of nearshore and offshore fishing tips and tricks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to do something a little special tonight. Each week we kind of change things up a little bit, keep you guessing. And this week we're going to do some more tips and tricks, kind of conversate a little bit more and focus on sharing some tips and tricks a little bit more frequently throughout the show. So hopefully you guys enjoy tonight. I know some of you guys might be watching some football tonight, but hopefully we'll have some viewers. I'm glad the Bucks won. That was pretty cool to see the Bucks win. I don't know how many of you guys are watching the games, but it was cool. Bucks pulled it out there.
I watched to see if there were how many people were in the stands, but they wouldn't show them.
Yeah, they're definitely hiding that kind of thing right now. Again, guys, if you're watching live, we're going to get rolling here in just a few minutes. If you're not watching live, you can skip forward to where the video starts. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you comment where you're watching from. Click like or give us the thumbs up if you can hear us loud and clear. And make sure you share the stream with your favorite fishing group or on your timeline to help us spread the word. We're going to be rolling here very shortly. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you all for your comments. Make sure you comment where you're watching from. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us loud and clear. And we're going to be rolling here very shortly. If you're watching this live, just bear with us a second. If you're not watching this live, you can skip forward to where you see the video start. Hopefully you guys are having a good Sunday night. I know I am. It was a good day. Got a lot done today. Unfortunately, the red tide is becoming more of an issue around my area, but the fishing has been mostly unaffected. Offshore fishing not affected at all. Nearshore fishing a little affected. We got to go a little further, but it's we're still catching plenty of fish. We're going to show you here shortly, once we get started, some of the fish we've been catching on these half-day fishing trips. We're doing really, really well out there. Again, guys, make sure you comment where you're watching from. Share the stream with your favorite fishing club or on your timeline to help us spread the word. And give us a like or a thumbs up if you can hear us loud and clear. We're going to be rolling here very shortly. Hopefully you guys are ready for another good show tonight. Brought my dad back. Captain Mark Hubbard's in the studio tonight. Captain Anthony was supposed to be the guest, but he's a little under the weather right now, so hopefully we'll have him in here next week So stay tuned for more of that. And we are ready to get rolling. How you guys doing? Happy Sunday. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate you watching tonight. Captain Mark's back again, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about some fishing tips, tricks, and give you lots of information. We always start off the show by talking a little bit about what we've been catching, and that's the same way we're going to do it tonight. We wanted to make sure we show you some of the half-day trip catches that we've been seeing lately. A lot of people asking about red tide. I mean, the red tide questions just won't stop. And unfortunately, it's a cross we're going to have to bear here for the next couple, I mean, maybe even a week or two. But hopefully it keeps moving. This red tide is a living organism. It actually can swim. It can move. So tides, currents, wind all helps make it move, but it also moves on its own. So every day it's a little different. Every day it's an ever-changing event, that's for sure. And right now, for the past week or so, we've had the red tide in the area. I'd say last week is when we started to really see it inside John's Pass.
Yeah, the high tides were bringing it in a little bit at a time, and now with this west wind for the last 4 days, it's concentrated it right on the beach, so it's coming in a lot more, and unfortunately it's blowing it up into the Capri and along Park Street, and just yesterday it got up into my area there on Treasure Island.
Yeah,
most annoying.
I actually saw it a lot along the seawall there inside Bogosiega Bay, so that's not good for sure. We had a juvenile dolphin wash up on Egmont Key today where we were dropping off the guests, which wasn't cool. So a lot of that stuff going around right now, but the good news is we're still catching some fish. So I'm going to show you now what we've been catching this week on our half-day fishing trip. This is a keeper red grouper they caught on the 5-hour half-day Tuesday. You can see here behind them, the water's not that clean blue water. It's still fairly dirty water. That's not dead fish behind them. That's just foam, sea foam. So we are still catching plenty of great eating fish, still doing very well on our 5-hour half days, 10-hour all days, 12-hour extreme trips. We have a 12-hour night snapper coming up this Friday night with a light load, and we're doing well, as you can see. So here's a keeper red grouper from the 5-hour half day, which is totally not normal. So it's good to see those red grouper feeding. And then here is some of the more typical 5-hour half day catch. Some gray snapper, also known as a white grunt or a Key West grunt. Really good eating near shore species, and they are still biting despite what you might hear or think you hear on the news and social media. This red tide event has brought out a lot of red tide biologists, let me tell you. It's crazy how many red tide experts are around right now. A lot of hogfish. We're still seeing some hogfish here and there.
That picture, you can see the water is so much nicer in the back. So
yeah,
that's how patchy it is. You'll be in like some brown water, and then just a few miles around the corner, you get the blue water.
And it is like that. It's patchy, and a lot of people are saying, oh, no, it's terrible until 35, 40 miles out. But it's not that way at all. There's definitely some dirtier water in that 20 to 30 mile range, but there's plenty of patches of clear water, as you can see behind this gentleman in the photo. Mr. John Kitson holding up a nice hogfish. Some smaller hogfish we've been catching, some good eating porgies. Another juvenile red grouper, nice catch there. Some scamp on the 5-hour half day. Again, you can see behind them the clear blue waters. These are all fish off our 5-hour half day, our shortest trip, closest to shore. So we're not going after real big monsters. We're just going after some action, and I'm showing you these photos to show you guys that the red tide has not totally shut us down like some people have been assuming. Look at this big old hogfish caught today. This is beautiful. From today, big male hogfish, and you'll be impressed when you see who caught him. There he is. The gentleman in the green shirt got the biggest fish on the half-day trip today. It's always good to see kids getting hooked on fishing, and he wouldn't let his dad carry it off the boat. He had to carry it off the boat himself. He was so proud of that fish. Showing it off on the dock, it was really, really cool. So he was one happy angler catching this big old hogfish for sure. these hogfish, we've been seeing them here and there. They will continue to bite better and better as the water cools. Typically, February, March, and into early April is kind of the peak time for hogfish, but we see hogfish all the way through the fall and in through the winter. As the water cools, they get a little bit more aggressive, a little less leader shy. We typically will catch more of them. So as the water cools, we're looking forward to gags coming in shallower waters. We're looking forward to the hogfish biting a little bit better for us, and getting a little bit more aggressive, less leader shy. And the kingfish are going to be around the corner, hopefully anytime now, probably sometime early October, mid-October, depending on those cold fronts. I'm hoping and praying we get a few early cold fronts. We need a big, strong, bad to the bone cold front right now, to break up some of this red tide and cool off the water. As the water cools, that red tide algae will die off and get out of our way. So we're looking forward to that. Definitely, as you can see, though, we've been catching some good fish. So red tide is around. We literally have reddish water inside Johns Pass right now. We have some decent amounts of dead fish. We saw some juvenile snook today. We saw sheep's head, trout, even some snapper species. So unfortunately, the red tide is definitely around, definitely here, pretty thick, pretty concentrated. But we're still catching plenty of fish on our 5-hour half day, 10-hour all day, all the fishing trips. We still have dolphin trips running. We're still going out to the islands. We still have people here who want to go out in the boat. So if you want to get out in the boat, we're still going out in the boat. Unfortunately,
Shell
tomorrow,
Key and Egmont, I believe, is clear. There's not much red.
Not today, no. Egmont Key, we actually had that juvenile dolphin wash up. And there was
The water's
yeah.
brown.
Yes, just in the last 2 days, Shell Key and Egmont Key, because it was clear the beginning of this past week.
This west wind.
Yeah, the west wind has really pinned a lot of that stuff into the bays, the mouth of the bays. Luckily, Tampa Bay is still clear, though, which is impressive. Apparently, I've heard they're increasing the flow to the Hillsborough River to try to hold that red tide at the mouth of the bay and not allow it to come up into the bay. Which I don't know if that's going to work or not, but if it does, kudos to them.
We had a lot of rain earlier in the month, but we haven't had much rain this last week. The storm up there is going to pull all the moisture up and mess us up, and the storm that went across the Gulf.
Isaac, we had high hopes for Isaac.
Yeah. It might, some of that might come up into the Gulf as a tropical wave, but we'll know more here in the next couple days.
Yeah, it's weakened to a tropical depression, and it looks like it's going to do that northwest track right into the coast of Texas. But it's got a really low chance of developing, unfortunately. So
Texas doesn't need any more rain.
Yeah.
they already got their hands full.
They already got one of those depressions on them. So definitely unfortunate, but long story short, red tide is here. We're seeing a lot of dead fish, but we're catching a lot of fish near shore and offshore. Don't be afraid to come out and join us for a 5-hour half day. The next one is Tuesday. We have a Wednesday 12-hour extreme. Friday we have that 12-hour night snapper trip. Plenty of room on all the trips. It's a great time to come out and enjoy the boat and give yourself a shot at some of those hogfish you saw. The trick to the hogfish is super light tackle. Good news is we just got our brand new Bull Bay rods. I haven't had a chance to show my dad yet, but I am so pumped about these rods. They're so nice. They are the lightest, strongest, nicest rods I've seen. And Dustin Phillips, Kelly Phillips at Bull Bay Rods just totally knocked it out of the park. Beautiful, custom Hubbard's Marina Bull Bay rods. You have to come by this shop and see them. We've only got 2 or 3 of each kind right now. But as you get a chance to see them, Garrett Hubbard gets a chance to see them, some of our guests get a chance to see them, we're going to kind of dial them in and then make a bigger order. Because I know a lot of you guys out there are excited to get your hands on them. The snapper rod is just incredible. I've been talking about the Hubbard's Marina Killer Stick. That's a rod my father and I developed. That rod is awesome. It's one of my favorites. Always been one of my favorites. And, I mean, just totally knocked it out of the park with these new rods. I mean, it would be hard for me to go back to the old Killer Sticks.
It's funny how that is. You know, you love this certain rod, and then you get a nicer one.
Yeah.
But you don't really want to give away the old one.
Yeah.
And then that's what happens. And after about 10, 15, 20 years, you end up with a room full of these rods.
Yeah.
And they all have a story to tell, you know. It's cool. I still have my first rod that Granddad bought me from, which was Eckerd Drugs back then, the old Hurricane rods. And back then, there were no tackle stores.
Yeah.
You had to get your tackle and your rods from a place like Eckerd's or a supermarket. Because all the little bait and tackle stores, they couldn't afford all the tackle back in
Eckerd's, like
50s
Walgreens.
and 60s.
You're talking about Walgreens, that kind of thing.
Before Walgreens, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was Eckerd.
The drugstore.
Yeah, yeah.
The pharmacy.
Pharmacy, yep.
Yeah.
They had the fishing tackle.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That's impressive. Is that white and blue rod you have?
Yes, I had it rewrapped, and that is the original blank.
Wow.
That's the original colors, yeah. It is pretty cool. It's heavy. Solid, almost a solid blank, but it's a good trout rod or a kingfish or a mackerel rod for softmouth fish.
That's awesome. So these are definitely one of those rods. These new Bull Bay Hubbard's Marina rods are definitely one of those rods you'll want to keep forever. They actually have a lifetime warranty on the blank. It's incredible, the warranty they give. The guides are coated non-corrosive, so they're guaranteed not to rust up and corrode on you. They're ceramic, so they're super high quality, super strong. The spinning rods, the guides on them only have 2 feet, and they look super fragile. But you can sit there and push on it with your thumb and it won't move. Whereas some of those 3-footed guides you can push on and you hear them cracking, and they want to bend and flex on you. And these have 2 feet. It looks like they're held together with toothpicks. And they're so strong.
And
it's incredible.
Does it like flex and then come back from the memory, or is it like one of those?
They're stiff. Stiff.
They're stiff.
Yeah, very stiff. I mean, these rods are just absolutely unbelievable. The snapper rod is, I can't wait for you to see it. And they're so well balanced. You hold the foregrip and the rod just sits there perfectly still. I can't wait to put a reel on it and let a fish pull on it. It's going to be awesome. So again, guys, make sure you comment where you're watching from. Click like if you can hear us and see us well. And make sure you share the stream on your timeline or your favorite fishing club to help us spread the word. Tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about some tips and tricks and answering some of your questions. So definitely happy to report that we're still catching fish despite the red tide in our area. Unfortunate what's going on. Definitely interesting what's going on with the snook and redfish down from Bean Point, which is the very northern tip of Anna Maria, all the way down south. They've made redfish and snook catch and release only. And a lot of local guys are pushing to move that closure all the way through Pinellas, even into Pasco County. Pretty interesting.
Just wait and see what happens with red tide.
Yeah, they're trying to eliminate the pressure from these game fish, snook, redfish. Guys like Captain Mike Anderson, Tim Whitfield, Dave Marquette. A lot of the guys at Florida Guides Association all are advocating for that catch and release only on snook and redfish, just to let the population not have that pressure, because the red tide makes them easy to target. They're all heading up into the rivers trying to hide from this stuff, and it makes them really idiot-proof as to where you can find these fish, and they're lethargic, slow-moving.
And very aggressive, because if you do find a little patch of clean water, they're going to be all over any bait you throw in there, because they're just ahead of this red tide, just like we're doing offshore.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a wave of fish right ahead of the red tide.
Yeah.
So it's makes sense.
Yeah, so definitely interesting what's going on there. But offshore, we're seeing the similar thing. As he was saying, you find these patches of clear water where the fish are feeding really, really well for us. And even in some of that dirtier green water, we're still catching plenty of fish. The big thing I wanted to talk about tonight was some grouper tips and tricks as we come into fall. These months ending in ER, the gag grouper bite's going to get better and better and better. And gag grouper, a lot of people like hearing about gag grouper. I've talked about it a lot. What are some of your favorite tips?
I've been thinking about it. We got the Flying Hub 1 running.
Yep.
And for years, the fishery's coming back the way it was pre-2010, where the fish would migrate in a certain area and we would go out and just catch our limit every day. And I think last year they've started to move into those areas. Captain Frank tapped into it a little bit. He was taking the hub out personally with friends and limiting out everybody. And I feel that this year should be the year.
Yeah.
The red tide's not up in that area, and as long as it doesn't get up there, then I think this will even be an added benefit because it's going to push a lot of those fish ahead of it. The red tide's going to be like a wall, and so hopefully our October, November, and December gag grouper fishery is going to be off the chain. We have a new captain that we're working with that perhaps might come on board 100%. And if he does, with Captain Joe and Anthony running the Flying Hub 1, Flying Hub 2, we'll be able to go up there and demolish those fish. And it's just on the border of the hub. The hub can go as well, but it just takes a longer run.
Yeah. The Flying Hub 1, Flying Hub 2 is definitely going to give us a lot of flexibility to get to that gag grouper ground that we're talking about here. It's definitely going to be an interesting fall. We're looking forward to catching some of these big gags. But as far as gag fishing goes, what are some of your favorite tips and tricks as far as tackle goes? I mean, right now we're talking about a little shallower water. We're not talking about super deep, anywhere from 60 to 120 foot of water. So as far as in that depth range, what kind of tackle would you be using?
Got to be 80-pound plus. These are super fast fish. These are aggressive fish that are on the move. The water's cooling off. They're right by the ledges, and you just have to be really ready, as you normally do with gag grouper, but these you have to be exceptionally ready for. I'd probably run 100 with a 100-pound leader, and just be ready with these new 2-speed reels. Have it on high speed, get the crank on them, get them off the bottom, and then drop down to low speed. With regular rod and reels, definitely the Daiwa 400 or the 113H high speed reels, which those are all old school reels I'm talking about nowadays. But at least 4-to-1 or higher gear ratio. I believe those high speeds and those Daiwas were 4.7-to-1.
Yep.
And it gave you enough to where you could crank on them, but they're fast enough to get them off the bottom. The shallow water fish is just amazing how they can dig and just break off 80-80.
Oh, yeah.
And so you've got to be able to get them off the bottom and then finesse them a little bit. If they go to dig, drop your rod tip down or even back to drag off a little bit.
Yeah. It seems like the shallower they get, the more aggressive they get almost.
And they fight all the way to the surface.
Yeah.
So you're right up under the boat, and they are digging just as hard as they are on the bottom. So you got to give them a little bit more because it's annoying. You got them off the bottom, you got them coming up, and they go for a serious dig, and you pull the hook, bend the hook, break the leader, and you can almost see them. Yeah. I mean, you're seeing color, and that's the fault to the angler. He just didn't do his job and finesse it up right.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things with these shallow water fish. When they're on fire, you can throw anything down there. Live bait, dead bait, jig, I would imagine. But when you get on those moving fish, they're ready to rock and roll. And I'm excited about targeting them this year. And using the 2 fast boats and working with you, let everyone know, and being able to go out there and get our limits.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, that's for sure. Those 2-speed reels like the Daiwa Saltiga, the Shimano Talica, the Accurate Valiant series, all those 2-speed fast reels give you that give you that speed to retrieve that line, tighten down that line, and then you're able to click that button and downshift into that lower gear. And get that fish up off the bottom. What he was talking about with those 4-to-1 gear ratios, that's kind of almost a medium gear ratio nowadays, because a high gear ratio is like a 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 now. It's crazy how fast these reels are getting. So you really want to try to look at the tool you're using and making sure you're maximizing it for not only having that speed that you need, but also the power you need.
Because if you only have one speed, you wouldn't want to use, like that would be a Mangrove snapper.
Yeah.
Like the Daiwa Seagate series, which are what, 6.5-to-1?
6.2-to-1.
And you wouldn't want to go gag grouper fishing with one of those.
Yeah.
That's your mangrove snapper stick. You'd want to go with a reel with a lower gear ratio.
Yeah, a low gear ratio is 2 to 1, 3 to 1. Really, 3 to 1 is a common low gear ratio. High gear ratio is 5 to 1, 6.2 to 1 starts getting high gear ratio. That medium gear ratio is what he's referring to, that 4 to 1. Gives you a little bit more speed to retrieve that line. Like, for example, fishing a 9-knot would be your go-to for a big gag, slower moving gag grouper out in deeper water with 3 to 1 gear ratio. But in the shallower water, what we're discussing, these fish get super aggressive in this fall period when they're moving, they're on the migration, they're going somewhere, and you want to have a little bit more speed, but you still want that power. So with a single speed rod is what you're referring to, reel is what you're referring to.
Yes.
Just trying to get that a little bit clearer, because I'm always preaching the low gear ratio for the really big fish, and the 2-speed with the high gear ratio if you're getting fancy on them. So definitely an interesting take on things. It's going to be an interesting fall and winter, to say the least. Looking forward to using and abusing the Flying Hub 1 and Flying Hub 2 to get out there and touch those fish. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully they're there and they're ready to chew, and hopefully you guys are ready to crank them up. Now, as far as those fish go, I remember doing that a lot with you on the Hub back in like 2008 and 9, back when the gag grouper fishing was off the charts. 2010,
yes,
right before that 2014 red tide event that really did a number, and that was a great time, and there was a lot of really aggressive fish up there, hitting anything from your dead bait all the way to your live bait. It didn't really matter what you used, like you were mentioning before.
Yep.
It's exciting. Now I'm excited. Now, besides that, how about mangrove snapper? I talk a lot about mangrove snapper, the 2-speed reels, the double snell rigs, your fluorocarbon leader. What's some of the things you would add to that for mangrove snapper tips?
Oh, yeah, it's you're baiting your hook. You're hooking your bait in a way to where it doesn't spin in the water. A lot of the guys use the plugs where you cut the head and you cut the tail off and use just the center section and you hook it backwards. That way it goes through the water real smooth. The double snell rig with I use a 50-pound fluorocarbon. You can use 40-pound or even 30-pound, but you really have to set your drag lighter and you have to switch your leader a lot more, because any little nick, you're going to lose your fish. Whereas I'm a little lazier. I'll use a 50-pound fluorocarbon. Gives me a chance where I can catch 5-6 fish before I have to switch a leader. And then I use a 50-pound line that is about the diameter of a 35-pound to 40-pound. Rich Sipple turned us on to that line.
Berkeley Pro Spec.
Yeah.
I like the Berkeley Pro Spec.
I just bought me some big spool of 60 and a big spool of 80.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
I know
80 is like 60-pound test with diameter, and it's just brutal to get out of the bottom.
You know what's funny about that Berkeley Pro Spec is Terry Robinson at Offshore Angler, like the main guy for Bass Pro Shop's saltwater division. That's the only line he uses when he's tournament fishing, is Berkeley Pro Spec. They make a even more abrasion resistant orange high vis color for trolling. And he was telling me a story. He hooked a 1,000+ pound black marlin, had the thing tail walking. I forget what country he was in, but tail walking away from the boat, and a freighter is coming. And the freighter ran over the line that had his marlin on it. He backed the drag off. The freighter went by and tightened the drag back up, cranked down. The fish was still on there.
Nuts.
Yeah.
That is amazing to get hung up on the sea chest or something.
Yeah, or the rudder or something. It's an unbelievable story. It is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it. I mean, I started using a line because of the action that Richie had on the boat. I mean, he caught that 65-pound cabera. We all thought it was a shark, and we're telling him to break it off. We couldn't break it off. And so he finally reels it up, and it's a big old cabera. A number of times he gets stuck in the bottom, and he just doesn't even try to get it out. He just gives it to a deckhand. One time I went to help him. You can't get it out of the bottom. And he's only using the 50-pound.
Yeah.
And so we went to this. I went to the 60 and the 80, and it's I'm excited about using it.
That's what I like about those 2-speed reels when you're trying to break out of the bottom. It makes it so easy when you're in high gear ratio and you try to get out of the bottom. You can just slam it all the way into gear, or all the way the drag full, put it into low gear, and just crank. And half the time it breaks you right out of the bottom.
Sometimes, but that stuff, we wrap it around the reel, and then you start pulling it up. And I mean, it is tough.
Yeah.
I mean, that 50-pound stuff, I mean, you're pulling 60, 70 pounds before it breaks.
Yeah.
And I don't look forward to pulling the 80-pound stuff. It's like when you get hooked in the bottom with 100.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been using Diamond Momoy for years.
Yeah.
And the stuff is great, but I think this Berkeley's got a beat.
Yeah, Berkeley Pro Spec is the line we're talking about right now. Definitely a very, very high quality monofilament line. And if you're still one of those guys who like monofilament, Berkeley Pro Spec is a great choice. You pretty much strictly use monofilament still, correct?
Yeah, except for the deep drop trips.
Yeah.
And my electric reel. I have 150. Who's the big name?
It's Power
Braid?
Pro.
Power Pro, yeah. We used the Power Pro on that. We had a bunch of spools there in the Marina.
That's just because we got to deal with
the
we
spinner
like
rods.
the spider wire.
I use the Power Pro on the spinner rods, the wind tamer fins.
Yeah.
I like that wind tamer stuff, but now Power Pro's come out with some.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, the braided line inshore fishing makes a lot of sense for that casting ability. Offshore, a lot of guys use braided line, especially now with jigging becoming so popular. Jig fishing, braided line is a big go-to there. And then also for the snapper fishing, feeling that mangrove snapper bite. But
it's fine if that's what you want. I can feel the bite with the mono, but then I use the stretch of the mono to my advantage. When that thing is shaking his head on the way up, that mono's taking the shock and absorbs the power of him popping the possibility of him popping those hooks out. So I think in mangrove snapper fishing, I prefer the mono straight all the way. Same thing with gags and the other fish. If you're in a current, the braid goes through that current better. So I see there's reasons for it, and definitely feel the bite better. But once you get really good at it, you can feel the bite with mono just as well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's what you want.
Yeah.
You get a real nice rod and reel that has a nice soft drag, the braid works fine.
Yeah.
I started when the drags weren't so sensitive and the drags were perhaps not as smooth. So we needed the mono to take that shock of the fish shaking his head and digging, and we just dropped the rod tip down and let him take a little bit and then bring it back up. Whereas nowadays with these high-end reels, they can shake their head and the spool lets out drag every time he shakes his head. So the reel's taking the beating or letting the drag out as smooth as they are nowadays.
Yeah. That Daiwa Saltiga has a free-floating spool. It's so smooth. It's crazy.
It is. You got me. That's the one you got me for Christmas?
Yep.
Yeah. No, it is amazing. I mean, I mean, trying that drag, I mean, you could just so softly pull and it'll take a little bit of drag out. And that's what I'm talking about with the braid. It'll take anything the fish has to throw at it. You have to have the drag set right. But it is definitely a good tool.
Interesting. The old tried and true argument, is braid work? Is braid better? It's definitely a conversation that seems like it's going to go on and on and on.
Well, you can cheat with braid.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have, like I cheat. I do 150-pound braid, which is only like 35 to 40 pound diameter, you know, and I put in a 130 pound leader, or I'll even use a 100 pound leader. Sometimes I'll even use an 80 pound leader on that 150 main line.
Yeah.
But that stuff is bulletproof. I mean, I could have 5 people wrapped around me and I'm still bringing it up. As well as, you know, I can go up on line as much as I want, and I have all the power I want. It's all really what I want is put on drag on my reel.
Yeah.
Same thing with spinning rods. I mean, you know, we used to use, 10, 12 pound mono. Mm-hmm. Now you could use
30 pound braided
30
line.
pound, and it's the same as 12 pound diameter. But, I mean, we're using 20 pound or 30 pound, 25 pound braid, and it's like the diameter of 6 pound.
Yeah.
So you can cast for a mile, and you have all that flexibility. Now your leader is your leader.
Yeah.
But
and you have to get fancy with all those line-to-line knots. The FG knot's definitely a go-to. We like using the Albright knot a lot, just because that Albright knot's such a quick and easy line-to-line knot. But the FG knot's a little bit more technical, but it's definitely superior in strength. One of the knots that my father uses a lot, has taught me, and the guys at Dogfish Tackle have really perfected, is the bobbin knot, the PR bobbin knot. And I just did a video with Salt Strong at Dogfish Tackle to teach people how to do the PR bobbin knot. And it's very, very, very technical knot. But once
can you do that with light tackle, or is that mainly for like 40 pound or 80 pound plus?
You can do it for light tackle, but it's mainly meant for 20, 30 pound plus. Your monofilament has to be at least probably 30 pound, I would imagine. I've never tried it with light.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing it less than 60 or 80 pound.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult. I've done it with 40 pound, and it's doable. And the guys at Dogfish have done it with 20 pound. They're experts. But it's doable for lighter tackle. They do it with all their rods. If you go to get a rod spooled up at Dogfish Tackle, they will use the PR bobbin knot to put, if you're doing braided line to monofilament or fluorocarbon. So they do that with all their rods, any line strength that nowadays you're going to be using, because it's all 20 pound plus. But they did it for me with 40 pound. I brought back a rod. They did it with 60 pound. But on the video, again, Salt Strong, just put it in YouTube or Google it, Salt Strong PR bobbin knot, and you'll find the video. It's really, really interesting. It's 16 minutes long. It's not an easy knot to tie. You know how to tie it. I mean, it takes a while, right?
When you get good at it, it doesn't take all that much time.
Yeah, well, I'm not good at it. It takes me a while. It's definitely not one of those knots you want to try to do on the boat, for sure. It's definitely a technical knot.
Yeah,
but
it ain't right. You got to cut it out and do it again. There's no doubt about that. You don't want to do it half-assed.
Yeah, and that knot is the only 100% strength line-to-line knot, braid to mono. It's literally 100% strength as the line. So the line on either side of that knot will break before the knot does. Very impressive knot. And big shout out to Salt Strong and Dogfish Tackle for doing that video for us, and definitely interesting.
I like that, the reverse Albright, and I do it manually. Will has a really neat way of doing it. Well, he'll do a loop on one side.
No, every time I see Will tie a knot, he does it a different way. Every time.
That's funny.
He jokes about it, because on every overnight trip he meets someone who does it a different way. So Will has showed me 10 knots that he calls the reverse Albright knot. So I don't trust his name.
Well, he adds the loop to it, so he puts the loop on one side, and then he does the reverse Albright with it, and I've never seen it break.
Yeah, and that's the knot I've been using for a long time, until I started using the FG knot. And I like the FG knot, but I still like that reverse Albright with the loop that Will showed me. It's still very
fast, easy, and you're never going to break it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many other things are going to go wrong
before
that knot breaks.
Yeah. But the PR bobbin knot's definitely, when I'm putting, let's say, 60 yards or 100 yards of fluorocarbon or monofilament on, especially
I use
for
heavy tackle.
trolling.
I use it for heavy tackle.
Yeah.
Anything over 80 pound test.
You do that for your deep drop rod.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a cool knot, but one of the ones you want to tie at home. So we talked about some knots. We talked about mangrove snapper. We talked about gag grouper. We talked a little bit about hogfish.
And a big tip, the line.
The line, what line? Oh, Berkeley Prospect. Yeah, we let that cat out of the bag. Tip. What do you think about that question right there? That rumor has been floating around.
Talking about the Flying Hub 3.
Yeah.
It is...
I think Anthony's been mentioning it. Dan's definitely a gentleman who's privately chartered with us a few times. And the rumor is flying around, and the rumors
no
are...
pun intended.
Yeah. Flying Hub 3 rumors are flying around.
The boat is designed. It is done. I got a contract on my desk. I need to sign it and send it in. Just a little nervous about the red tide issue and working through some financial side, and I'm excited about it. Just haven't signed at the bottom line yet.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Dan Swanson, we haven't ordered a new boat. We've built it. It's on paper. We've redesigned the Flying Hub 2. It's going to be bigger, badder, faster, more efficient, more smooth, and just waiting to pull the trigger, mostly due to what's going on in our fisheries with red grouper, gag grouper. A lot of talk about cutting back red grouper quota, a lot of talk about cutting back gag grouper quota, and why do we need a super big, fast, quick moving boat if all these quotas are going to get cut? We would like to use it for deep drop fishing every day, but unfortunately just don't have that clientele ready to privately charter this type of vessel. This thing is out of this world. Not going to tell you anything about it yet. We going to keep that totally under wraps until further along. So long story short, no, we haven't ordered a new boat, but Flying Hub 3 is in the works. You can count on us to keep you guessing, that's for sure, and keep you on the edge of your seat. So let's see what questions we have. We talked a little bit about the line, mangrove snapper, gag grouper. We talked about some different tips and tricks. One thing before we get into questions, Dad, I did want to talk to you about some of the history behind Hubbard's Marina, John's Pass, and just some of this history behind yourself. I mean, I'm 27 years old. You're very experienced, and you've been doing this a long time. And I'm blessed to be the son of a sailor, but you're a son of a sailor, and you've been doing this, you started charter fishing when you were 21?
I used to have an 18-foot wellcraft. I would take people out kingfishing and mackerel fishing.
Wow.
And 21, I guess I was, yeah.
Yeah.
Just out of high school in the 80s, early 80s, 80, 81. And net fished. And,
on the hub?
Net fished on a little commercial net boat. And then got the Bertram. Your Uncle Jeffrey and I went in halvesies and bought the Bertram, and that
was the Mr. Lucky.
That was Mr. Lucky, and Dave Zalewski bought the Lucky 2. He actually wanted the Mr. Lucky, and we bought it. Granddad bought it actually. He chartered it for a couple of years. Old Captain Larry Lewanis ran it, and he's since passed away from a diving accident. But Uncle Jeffrey and I bought that boat, ran that till 92, I guess it was, or 1990. It was 1990, and sold it to buy the original Sea Adventure party boat.
Oh, nice.
Yep, and then sold that and did some dolphin watching. Oh, that year we bought the Hub, which was a net boat back then, a commercial stone crab with it. And around 1994, started charter fishing it after we remodeled it. And so that's what I started getting back into charter fishing. At the meantime, I was still running on the party boats with Granddad and Uncle Jeffrey, and continued to run the Hub as a charter boat, and then started managing the fishing boats again with Grandma. And what did we do? I don't know. Just kept on running them, and ended up buying that company in 2004, and chartering the Hub and running the 2 party boats, and running the boats myself and running the company, yada, yada, yada. But over the years, we've all had sweat equity in it. Your granddad started, he was guiding after World War II for kingfish and mackerel.
Came home from World War II and went right into guiding for kingfish and mackerel.
There was nothing else to do after World War II. We were just coming out of the Depression. Wow. So really, there wasn't a whole lot to do. They were dipping shrimp on the outgoing tide and catching greenbacks and selling them for the people coming out of St. Petersburg there at Paso Grill. And Pop, before he got his first charter boat, he would row out and catch the fish. A lot of people did, because a lot of people didn't have motors back then or could afford them. But as the economy got better, after World War II, he had a little bit of money saved up. He got a small charter boat called the Hubbard, and that was his main thing was kingfish and mackerel. And they commercially fished them and charter fished them. Wow. Over the years, and he got the first Paso Grill, Miss Paso Grill, and he got Miss Paso Grill 2, Miss Paso Grill 3, and then the fly-in fisherman, and then the Florida fisherman.
Yeah.
And in 1976, he was 63 years old, moved the whole operation to Johns Pass.
Wow.
Why? Because they built the Skyway and they built the Bayway down at the southern tip of St. Pete Beach. Changed all the traffic flows on St. Pete Beach. People stopped going to Paso Grill. The city down there, the residents actually thought about making it a gated community. They tried to put a gate there just past the Don Cesar.
Oh, wow.
So he knew the writing was on the wall. Tourism in Paso Grill is going to suffer for years. So he got an opportunity from a good friend of his to move to Johns Pass in 1976, and he did so at the end of that year. And he was off to the races. Built the dock, built a little ticket booth, started buying some stuff across the street. He and his son, Tommy Hubbard, built the Friendly Fisherman Restaurant in 1978. Local leaders in Madeira Beach and Dick Meisner, who built most of the seawalls in Pinellas County, built the Boardwalk in late 1979, 1980. And as soon as that Boardwalk went in, Johns Pass was changed forever. The first thing that changed when they moved the bridge from the old location to where it is today, and then that Boardwalk was the second piece of that puzzle, and it took Johns Pass from a blighted, sort of a dying little community because it used to be a hub, and then it became sort of an in destination. There were a few bars and stuff, Harold's Knife and Gun Club, the Cork and Barrel, I think it was. There was another very seedy bar, but a lot of commercial fishermen and yada, yada, yada. But the fishery continued to grow after the Boardwalk, and other operations down the Boardwalk, shops started going in, and I believe it was around the early 2002, 2003, they redeveloped all of Johns Pass into what it is today. Yeah. Actually, it was like it was in the 2000s. It was like 2002, 2003. Yeah, and today it's West Coast, Central Florida, biggest tourism destination, and we're blessed to have been there through it all, and not only take the visitors out on our boats, but to take our locals and our traveling fishermen out. With our roots into the fishing industry, we have all the different products from our advanced anglers to our visitors.
Yeah, and it's really been interesting in the last couple of years to see the changes in as far as the evolution of the fishery, as well as we've had these party boats that, what was it, in 67 or something? I have the brochures where they were advertising the first go fast party boat, and that was the Florida.
That was like 14 knots.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was go fast.
Yeah, so 14 knots. So what's that, like 20 miles an hour, 18 miles an hour?
Not even. But it was...
that was the go fast
boat. Commercial fish, too. They sold their catch right at the dock.
Yeah.
You go out, you fish, bring your fish in, and they would line up right there and sell them into a truck. And that would augment some people, good fishermen, actually made money. Other people just, subsidized their fishing habit. And that was so all the way till 1990. Early 90s was when the National Marine Fisheries and Magnuson-Stevens Act occurred, with the invention of the long line, and the fishery was collapsing.
Yeah.
And they had to stop all of that, get control of this, people selling this resource. And that's where we really started to struggle, because all of a sudden, all these guys couldn't sell their catches. And more than half the boat sold their catch. Even the recreational anglers sold their catch just to augment their vacation. There was very few people that didn't sell something. And all of a sudden, you're not allowed to sell anything. And that was tough. Those were tough years. And even through the mid-90s, people were black marketing their catches. And that one sting operation with guys that are on our boats, they followed them all over the state of Florida. They left the boat. They had their state limit, but then they would take them and sell them. And that was a battle. And that was the last few. But I mean, these guys were retired military, police. We had some CIA guys on board that were retired, and I mean, they all got fines. Some people got fines of upwards of $100,000.
Holy moly!
Yeah, and it was a really sad day. And so none of that's going on, and that's why we're so anal about it, making sure everyone understands the fish you catch recreationally, caught fish, in no way can be sold legally.
Yeah,
but you
that's
can
why
catch
we've got
your bag
so many
limit,
signs on
give
the
them
boat.
to your friends, what have you. But no selling of fish. But we at least catch enough fish to where you have a lot of fish to give away.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was pretty interesting. It's always cool to hear some of the old stories and to see how far it's come, from rowboats with cane poles to boats like the Flying Hub 2 and future iterations of party boats and go fast charter boats, and the Flying Hub 1, the Mrs. Hub. I never thought we'd have a boat like the Mrs. Hub. It's been very, very interesting, to say the least, and we're really blessed to have guys and gals like you who are willing to come fishing and come spend the day with us. We're really blessed to have the team of captains, crew, office staff, retail staff, everybody that we have at Hubbard's Marina that makes that possible for us. And
well, we work hard to be the best at what we do. Granddad had one of the first and the fastest party boats, the Flying Fisherman. And it wasn't the ideal fishing boat, but it was the fastest boat in the west coast of Florida. And then with the Florida Fisherman 2, that was a custom-built boat specifically designed to fish the Florida middle grounds. And that boat has served its purpose extremely well. And we work hard to maintain it and refit it and keep it, tweaking it, making it even better. And now with the Flying Hub 1 and Flying Hub 2, and maybe the Flying Hub 3, this new generation of boat is, it's Flying Hub 2 is first of its kind.
In the entire nation.
Yeah. I mean, that's the first Coast Guard approved foil-assisted vessel, and licensed for 100 miles offshore. So it's...
and you built it.
Yeah, we designed and built that boat. So we're holding in tradition. I took the company from the commercial fishermen to the sport fishermen and the traveling fishermen. Now with what we're doing right here tonight, Granddad had to do on Channel 13 with traditional media. You now do every Sunday night and every morning. And you're touching the next generation. And with Joe Drew, who is second generation fishing with us.
His father used to work for Grandpa.
He was first mate on the Florida Fisherman, the old Florida Fisherman. Yeah, how cool is that?
And Joe's older brother worked for you, and now Joe's working with us. It's really cool. Not only do we have family working with Garrett and Christine in the restaurant.
Garrett is your oldest uncle's son who worked Miss Pastor Grill for years, and we are now blessed with him being part of the offshore fishing team. Then Anthony with Brian.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony is a family of Brian's, and Brian's commercial fisherman who retired and working with us on our offshore team. And Anthony was raised on a commercial boat. So, I mean, he is as salty as you can get. And
don't tell him you said. I won't tell him you said that.
Of course, we have Frank, who's worked with us for years, and I mean, we have a good offshore fishing team. Captain Chris, maintaining the boats. He's been club mad. Grew up there in Madeira Beach, and educated by Pinellas County school system like me, and we have a good hands-on grasp on how to keep things running.
And what not to do.
There you go. But yeah, we have a good team, and you, with your expertise in social media, the next generation, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. We have good equipment. These boats, good young captains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a good team for sure. We're blessed. And thank you guys, for those of you watching, for making it possible. Couldn't do it without you. Make sure you comment where you're watching from and start commenting some of your questions. We're going to run through some of these questions here before we wrap up. One question I wanted to hit right off the bat was Jovan McNeil said, is Red Tide going to cancel my upcoming trip? Absolutely not, Jovan. You missed the beginning of the video where we showed all the great fish we're catching right now. Red tide is pretty bad along the beach and along the back, starting to move into the local bay around Johns Pass and upper Bogosiega Bay, but it is not affecting our offshore fishing trips
unless he's fishing on Thursday, because then I might have to cancel him because I'm supposed to meet him up at the Grove.
Yeah, Jovan, you have a date with the farm, but no, he's talking about a trip on the 25th, so definitely going to be unaffected, Jovan. No reason to worry about Red Tide canceling any trips. I mean, for goodness sakes, Egmont Key, Shell Key were running today, and there was a lot of red tide around that area, dead fish, all that kind of stuff. So we're still doing everything. We're still catching plenty of fish near shore, inshore, or near shore and offshore. 5-hour half days catching fish 10, 12, 13 miles from shore, so there's no reason our 10-hour all day wouldn't be going out there. We've been catching a lot of grouper lately. Been catching a handful of hogfish lately, some mangrove snapper. Captain Garrett this past week caught 10 keeper grouper on those hub 10-hour trips. So we're doing very well, and there's no reason any of those should be canceled. Today's 10-hour trip, I saw Dan Christopher asked how we did today. Today was a little bit slow on the grouper. They caught a handful of just barely undersized red grouper. Caught a nice gag grouper that was just shy of 24 inches. Caught some nice hogfish. Again, unfortunately, no keepers, but they got some nice lanes, vermilions, porgies, and they got a bunch of the gray snapper and stuff like that. So today was a little slow on the hub 10-hour, but it wasn't due to any red tide or anything like that. Just lost a lot of big fish, and what fish we did catch, the grouper, were just a little bit shy of keeper size. So the 10 hours have been doing really well. Marcelo Silva, we're using the special hub 10-hour trips right now. Again, the 10-hour all day instead of being on the party boat, because the Florida fisherman's in dry dock right now. The 10-hour all day is on the hub, so you get a chance to ride the hub for a 10-hour all day for the price of the party boat. So it's only $90 for 10 hours on the hub, up to 14 people. You get a smaller, faster boat, so you either go a little bit further, a little bit faster, get the same fishing time, or you get more fishing time at an average distance for the 10-hour trip. So we're doing really well, getting a little bit of a better shot at those grouper and hogfish just because there's less lines in the water. It's a smaller, quieter boat. But we've been doing well out there, to say the least, on that special hub 10-hour trip. The 5-hour half day on the party boat's been doing well as well. So a lot of great opportunities to catch fish, and none of those trips are at risk to be canceled due to red tide. For example, tomorrow's trip was canceled. The 5-hour half day on the party boat was canceled tomorrow, but not due to red tide, simply because so many of you guys have been worried about red tide. We didn't have enough anglers booked to go, so we had to cancel tomorrow's trip. But the rest of the week looks good to go, and no reason to cancel a trip because of red tide. We're catching tons of fish. Chris Blanco said, I learned about that FG knot from Salt Strong, actually changed the game for me. Yes, Salt Strong is an awesome organization. Joe Simons, Luke Simons, Will, Tony Acevedo, all those guys do a killer job. Really recommend Salt Strong for anybody who wants a more hands-on approach. We can sit here and talk about fishing tips and tricks, but Salt Strong actually will show you. There is a little bit of a cost to get on their Insider Fishing Club, but it's worth it. I'm not biased because I'm a teacher in it, but you'll enjoy it, trust me. And they make a lot of free videos like that FG knot video and that PR bob and knot video we were talking about before. That's completely free. So there's a lot of good free content from Salt Strong as well. Let's see here. Cherish Bratchell said, do you glue set your braid knots? No, I don't, Cherish. Have you ever done that?
Nope.
No. Typically...
do some half hitches.
Yeah, the half hitches. And the unique thing that Dogfish Tackle does to seal their PR bobbin knot and to make like a little ramp is to actually do a reverse uni knot, so that they act like you're tying a uni knot and then reverse it. It's very, very unique how it does that. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Yeah. So that is a really cool way to seal your braid knot without having to use any of that glue. So check out, again, that Salt Strong video. Just Google Salt Strong PR bobbin knot, and Cherish Bratchell, I'll drop the link in your comment. After this video is over, I always go back through all the comments, guys. So if we're missing your question, don't worry. We're going to get to it after this video is done. I'll go back through and answer all your questions that we didn't get to in the video. So plenty of great questions here, guys, and we'll definitely get to as many as we can while we're live. If we're not able to get to your question while we're live, we'll go through and definitely get to them. No problem. Do you see something you want to talk about here, Pops?
No.
Just getting a better view?
Yep.
Let's go to YouTube here. Let's see here. YouTube. When's the best time for gags? Harrison Hernandez said. Best time for gag grouper is typically months ending in ER. I like October, November, December. November around Thanksgiving being one of my favorite times. The second half of November, we've got 2 39-hour trips on Fridays, super light loads. We have some 39-hour trips. We have another one early December. We have some other 39 and 44-hour trips at the end of October. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to get on those long-range party boat trips for gags. Plus, we do the 12-hour extreme trip every Wednesday and Sunday. Great opportunity for gag grouper. Plus, we always have private charter options on the Flying Hub 1, on the Hub, on the Flying Hub 2. Endless options for you to get out there on those gag grouper.
We can catch gag grouper year round. You just can't keep them except for the last half of the year.
And they get a little bit more aggressive and prolific in the fall.
And they come in a little bit more, yeah. We can catch them anytime. You might have to go down off Fort Myers. You have to go out to 300, 400 foot of water. But, yeah, definitely the fall they come in shallower and closer to us.
Yeah. So definitely, all right, when's the best time for gags? Anytime. But the better time is...
If you want to keep them, yeah.
The better time is going to be the fall. Any month ending in ER. James Wright said, always looking at new rods. Definitely check out those new Bull Bay rods that we have at Hubbard's Marina. We just got them in. What's today? It's Sunday. Yeah, we just got them in this morning. Just brought them in the office this morning. It is a killer lineup of rods. We have a snapper rod, grouper rod. We have a hogfish rod, a big snook snapper rod too. So a lot of great options. Definitely comment your questions, guys. If I don't get to it while we're live, we'll go back through and answer them too. Do you use fluorocarbon for gags or mono? Is mono leader fun? Man, do you use fluorocarbon for gags or is mono okay? I personally would only use fluorocarbon. Yeah.
For a leader, well, when you're over 100-pound test, you don't need fluorocarbon. It's just,
it's one of those things. It's like if you're gonna go out there, to me, I put myself in the customer's shoes. You're gonna go out there, you're gonna spend a couple $100 to go out and go deep sea fishing. If you're spending a couple $100 to go deep sea fishing, spend the extra $20 and get fluorocarbon. Yeah, that's my opinion on the subject. But I agree with you in this fact that there's not much of a difference between monofilament and fluorocarbon, especially when you get that big.
Just for the big stuff. I use fluorocarbon anything below 80 pound. Even if I have a 100-pound fluorocarbon, I'll use it.
Yeah.
Just any, the 100-pound plus, I just The fish are going to be aggressive and they're big fish, so it's not that big a deal. It's less abrasive and it won't cut. The smaller fish and leader shy fish, fluorocarbon is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Let's see here. Ryan May said, how many angled rod holders on the back of the Friendly? None. There is no angled rod holders in the back of the Friendly, just in the back of the Florida.
Note to self.
Yeah.
Add rod holders. I did it on the Florida. We got to do it on the Friendly. You're exactly right.
We need them for trolling on the back of the Friendly.
Yeah. Just do them all the way across the back. And really, we just been lazy, and I apologize. That's something we should definitely do, and we'll try to get that done.
You know what a lot of people ask about is rod holders around the outside, and something I've always wanted to do is put tubes along the roof of the Florida and the roof of the Friendly, so you could put a rod just sticking up all the way around the boat, like antennas.
Plausible, yeah. Man, that's totally plausible. The roof is high enough, and there's a 3-inch flat surface to weld a plate onto, so I mean, that's feasible.
Yeah, because especially on the Florida, for a 39-hour trip, if you had a rod rack every 3 feet, you could put a rod in your rod holder, a rod above your head, and maybe even a couple rods above your head, you know? So
make it hard to run around with a gaff, because I run around with that gaff, I put it right on that surface, and I run around.
Yeah, you'd have to turn the reels around.
Oh, you just couldn't do it. You just couldn't do that. You have to run it with it out. But that's fine. It's just, I think the advantage of having the rod holders up there would be better for customer service, and it would keep those derelict rods out of the rod holders around the perimeter of the boat at the rail. Yeah. Because when we get a big fish on and we got to run with it, it's like, so what the heck owns all these reels? You know, we're throwing them everywhere, you know. It's annoying, but yeah, so that would help.
Yeah. Somebody was telling me a funny story about Garrett today on the 39-hour. I got it.
About derelict rods in the rod holders?
Yep.
Oh, I go off on them. Oh, yeah. Well, it's so annoying, you know. You got 20 people on the boat, and the whole front of the boat's rods. No one even know whose they are. And you got a big fish on, you're running around, you got to go around all those things. Yeah. And it just makes it harder to catch that big fish. And that's the whole idea of us being out there, is to catch the big fish. So that's what's annoying.
Yeah. More rod racks. We're going to work on it. Good question, Ryan. Let's see here.
I'll put it on Sam's to-do list.
Yeah, there you go. That thing's 6 pages long right now.
Dylan's cousin, my nephew's helping us build a boat right now, and he helps assisting, like he's working on the Florida right now as a welder, and we have a shop in Gulfport to support all these boats, and so we'll have to, on his part, on weekends, build a bunch of these rod holders to weld on.
That's cool. This guy, Robert Eaton, said, Captain Mark, just wanted to thank you for talking to my son on July 3rd of this year before we went on the 39-hour. He was afraid of catching a grouper. After your talk, he caught the biggest gag of his life. And Robert Eaton has come to my seminar and showed me that photo of that gag. I'll show you after the video. It was
fantastic. Well, that's great. I mean, that's great. Now he's hooked, and he'll come fishing with Pop anytime Pop asks, you know, and when he gets real old, he'll be asking Dad, hey, come on, let's go fishing. Yeah. How cool is that? That's like when we were doing that video and invited Craig Scott's dad, Mr. Scott, and then Greg, and then Greg's son. Yeah. There were 3 generations on the boat, and then the other gentleman from Ocala, I think it was. He had 3 generations on the boat. For the video that we were shooting.
That's Sundowners cool. Video. The pilot film. That thing is cool. Yeah. Still on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's an 18-minute video called Sundowners. It's on our YouTube channel. Really cool video. Spent a lot of time, energy, and some change on that thing. And it's a really cool video. Shows a lot of the history.
Had a little snippet we were talking about Joe Drew earlier, where he met his step grandma. Yeah, and that was pretty cool. He'd never met her before. Yeah, and she was there because she used to be a deckhand on the old Florida Fisherman. Huh. Yeah,
that's cool.
So that was a trip.
Literally. So Ryan May said there was a dude on the half day today that I think he thought he was going on the 39 hour. It's funny you said that, Ryan, because I was making fun of that guy too. His name's Eric Deskins. He's a real good friend of mine, a longtime guest and fishing buddy. And his dad and him and even the next generation, 3 generations of Deskins, go fishing with us too. So real good fishing family. They typically do the 39-hour. Today was his first ever 5-hour half day with us, Ryan May, and I was laughing, saying the same thing to him. I'm like, dude, you're gonna be out there for 3 hours. You don't need all this stuff. He keeps making trips back and forth to the boat. He was like, well, I didn't bring as much as I do on the 39 hours. Like, Eric, the only thing you forgot was your pillow and sleeping bag.
That's what's nice about that boat is you bring all that stuff up, put it under your bunk, under your place where you fish, and you can have all your bells and whistles and all the toys.
Yeah.
It's nice. Long trip, and you can try all different kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun on those long-range trips.
Biggest challenge is when you go out on the Flying Hub 2, it's like, no. You got the one rod and a couple gear shift changes, and that's it. You can't take all that stuff.
Yeah, you definitely have to scale it back on the Flying Hub 2 extreme trips. It's definitely been a little bit of a struggle trying to retrain some people that do the 39-hour trips that try one of those 12-hour extremes, because those smaller, faster, go fast boats ultimately are very weight sensitive. The Flying Hub 1, you just don't have much room to put stuff.
Don't have the room, and they're weight sensitive, and you're fishing for 8 hours, and it's nonstop, boom, boom, boom. You're grouper fishing or mangrove fishing, so that's all you need is that tackle. You put it in a little tiny bag.
Yeah, for real. MMO Carrera said, how do you know if the tide is good enough for going out to the elbow? What factors do you take into account when considering if the tide's ripping out there or not?
It's better to be lucky than to be good.
Well, I'm going to go a different route with that and talk about Rip Charts. Rip Charts is a really, really cool new app you can get on your phone. You can pull it up on a website. It's like $160 for the year. I haven't told my dad that I bought a membership yet, but you can actually type in the GPS coordinates of the fishing spot, and it'll pop a little mark on the map, and it will show you what the current's doing at that spot.
You have traditional currents, and then you have things like the loop current that'll throw off an eddy, and that's when it gets tricky and that kind of stuff. Well, I'm sure they utilize satellite images. Rough charts, right. Yeah, that's what I use when we do the deep drop trips and the pelagic trips.
But the Roth charts is one type of chart with the currents and the thermocline and all that. The Rip Charts has altimetry, it has chlorophyll, topographical, it has
adds them all together.
A multitude of charts. Yeah, and
well,
you can actually type in your fishing spots where you're going to go, put in your route, and it'll show you the depth of that spot, what the current's doing, how fast the current's running.
Traditionally, it's the full moon and the no moon.
Yeah.
Where the currents can be treacherous, and they could be ripping on the middle grounds, they could be ripping on the elbow. Traditionally, the 40 break in the elbow, it can get a little bit more testy, but you could run 20 miles and be in an eddy, still being on from one end of the elbow to the other end of the elbow. So that's when a fast boat comes into play. But we've been chased out of there many times before. If we go down there and we can't hold bottom, we just chug out of there and move into a different area. So it's not to worry. If you're going out on your own boat, same kind of deal. You just have to try it, and you can check this chart out that Dylan's talking about and try to figure it out for yourself. And you get out there and it's ripping, just move up a line a little bit and try it again.
Yeah, and it is definitely, like my father said, better to be lucky than good.
Yes.
Because even with the best technology, it's still an ultimate guess, because a lot of those charts are looking at old satellite data that's 48 hours old due to the protection, or some type of national security thing. You can't have real-time satellite imagery, but
I'm sure. Well, they take a lot of different data and add it all together, so they're probably pretty solid.
Yeah, it's just 48 hours old, so they're trying to make a little bit of a prediction. Something about real-time satellite data.
When you look,
They wouldn't let us fishermen have that.
yeah, when you're looking at those charts and there is an eddy close by, sort of take note of where it is. That way, if the current is ripping where you are, you just run over to where that eddy is, and usually it won't be as fast there. Worst comes to worst, you just got to shallow up.
Worst case scenario, just go shallower.
Heavier lead or shallow it up.
You know what's funny is that old saying, you're running by fish to go find fish.
Oh, yeah.
And
you sink your boat. I mean, we all sink our boats. We run over so many fish that we don't see. They're scattered out all over the place. Yeah, well, they're just scattered out all over the place, you know. And in bad weather, they'll get all bunched up, make it easier for us to catch. You know, a little trick when the current is ripping and you don't want to run, you can fish in hard current. But you either have to drift with the current and hold your bait up above the bottom, or occasionally drop it down and just sort of like walk the dog with the bait walks away from you, and then reel it up and drop it again. Or you can anchor up and use a heavier lead, but you drop your bait behind the structure rather than in front of the structure. Traditionally, on a light current, you would drop your bait and the fish show would be a leading edge of the structure. But a lot of times when there's not a lot of show and there's a ripping current, drop your bait behind the structure, because the fish are literally hiding behind that rock, getting out of the current. And you'll drop it right into the mouth of the fish.
We're getting a little too specific.
Yeah, we're talking tips and tricks.
That was a good one. It's similar to when you're fishing the bridge. That's what I equated it to. Someone came to me with the same type of question. And it's the same idea when you're fishing the bridge. That snook isn't sitting... For example, let's talk about John's Pass Bridge, the east and west, the outgoing tide. That tide's ripping out to the west. You wouldn't fish... That fish isn't going to be hanging on the east side of that bridge with his nose into the current, struggling to stay in front of the piling. He's going to be sitting behind the west side of that piling in the lee of that current. It's the same idea when you're fishing the elbow or the middle grounds or any big structure, big wreck or anything out there. Those fish are going to be sitting behind that structure, tucked in from that current when the current's ripping. So that's a really, really good tip there. So I think we covered a lot of questions. We're definitely approached more than an hour there and got a lot of good information out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this good video. I appreciate you coming back in for a second week, and I appreciate you guys all joining us. Remember, if you're too busy to go fishing,
you're just too busy.
Just too darn busy. You heard it here, folks. Let's go fishing. We're catching a lot of fish on our near shore and offshore trips. Everything's going. Nothing's canceled due to red tide. Yes, red tide is very bad in John's Pass and along the beaches and along the Jungle Parada boat ramp, but red tide is not affecting our ability to catch fish on our 5, 10, 12-hour trips. And mid-October, those 39, 44, and 63-hour trips are going to start back up. Got a 63-hour November 1st. We've got a 44-hour at the end of October. A ton of 39 hours before the end of the year. We've got a 12-hour Extreme Wednesday, a 12-hour Night Snapper Friday. Come out and go fishing. If you're too busy to go fishing,
you're just too busy.
Have a good night, guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Remember to share this video with your friends. If you enjoyed it, share it on your timeline. Help us spread the word. We'll see you this coming Sunday night. Captain Anthony is going to be in here whether he likes it or not.
Got to teach the jigging tricks.
Yeah, jigging tips and tricks coming at you. Come by the shop, see our new Bull Bay rods, Bull Bay Hubbard's Marina rods. Awesome new custom rods. The conventional rods are $280-ish, $280, $290. The spinning rods are $180, $190. Really, really, really cool options. And I look forward to seeing you inside Hubbard's Marina for those new rods. You do get 10% off with your trip. So great option for you to save 20, 30 bucks on these new fancy rods if you book a trip with us. Come by the shop, see us, and have a good night. Happy Sunday. Thanks for watching. God bless.